Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laiq Siddiqui, the father of holophase. In previous part, we learned that phi is primitive comparability, the root permission for distinction. Not a thing, not energy, not spacetime. The silent space that makes all pattern possible. Part 3. Why primitive comparability is circular. The S1 nature of phi. The shape of possibility. We now have our primitive, phi, the possibility of distinction itself, the ground beneath all pattern, the permission for this to differ from that. But a bare permission isn't enough. Possibility needs structure. It needs shape. Before we can have actual patterns, before we can have spirals and cycles and rhythms and repetitions, the possibility of distinction must have a form. So we ask, what shape is primitive comparability? This is not a physical question. We're not asking about something in space. We're asking about the logical structure of comparison itself. What is the form of this differs from that at the most fundamental level? The answer, which will ripple through everything that follows, is circular. Why linear absolutes fail at the primitive layer? Let's think about what a linear absolute would mean. Imagine we try to build pattern on a line, a straight line with a fixed 0 point. Position 0, position 1, position 2, stretching infinitely in both directions. What would that require? First, it would require a global 0, a fixed point that means the same thing everywhere, for everyone, for all time. But where would that 0 come from? Who gets to decide where 0 is? Any choice of 0 is arbitrary. There's no universal 0 built into the fabric of comparability. Second, it would require absolute labels that carry meaning by themselves, not just in relation to other labels. But in public reality, no absolute label carries meaning by itself. Position 5 means nothing without the ability to compare it to position 4 and position 6. The meaning is in the relations, not the absolutes. Third, it would require that every observer has access to the same absolute coordinates. But no observer has access to absolutes. Every observation is situated, partial, comparative. We always experience differences, never absolute values. A linear absolute foundation imports hidden privilege, the privilege of whoever gets to choose where 0 is. It pretends that absolute labels have public meaning when they don't. It assumes access that no observer actually has. So linear absolutes fail at the primitive layer. They smuggle in assumptions we have no right to. What we need instead? We need a form that has no privileged origin, no universal 0 that carries public meaning. Every point is as good as every other. Makes relations primary. Only differences matter publicly. The content is in the comparisons. Allows closure. The possibility of returning to the same relational state after traversing a path. This enables memory, cycles, recurrence. Enables discrete counts from continuous motion. The ability to count how many times you've gone around creates integers without assuming them. Is compact. Finite in extent, so global constraints are possible. What has all these properties? A circle. Introducing circle valuedness. In the formal language of phi pattern science, we write phi x S1. This is a map from some index set X to the circle S1. But let's unpack that in ordinary language. Think of phi as a field of possibilities spread across some domain X. At each location in X, and I use scare quotes because X is not yet space, it's just an index, a way of keeping track. Phi takes a value. But that value is not a number on a line, it's a position on a circle. Like a clock face, like a compass, like the phase of the moon, like the angle of a wheel. Circle valued. What X is and is not. X is a placeholder. It's a way of saying there are positions where phi can be evaluated without yet saying what those positions are. X could later become space or time or a set of possibilities or a collection of observers. For now, it's just an index set, a way of keeping track of distinct points of evaluation. This is crucial. X is not smuggled spacetime. We're not assuming space exists. We're not assuming time exists. X is just the minimal scaffolding needed to talk about variation, a set of places, in a logical, not physical sense, where phi takes values. Later, when we build up to physics, X may become spacetime. But not yet. For now, it's pure index. The foundational consequences of circularity. Now we come to the heart. Choosing the circle as the form of primitive comparability is not an arbitrary mathematical decoration. It has profound consequences that shape everything that follows. No privileged global zero. On a circle, every point is equivalent under rotation. There's no special zero that means more than any other point. 12 o'clock is no more fundamental than 3 o'clock. North is no more fundamental than east. This matches the public reality requirement. No observer gets to claim their perspective is the absolute truth. No coordinate system is privileged. What matters is relations, differences, intervals, ratios. Think of a compass. North is a convention, not a cosmic truth. On a different planet with a different magnetic field, north would be somewhere else. What matters for navigation is the relation between directions, not the absolute labels. Relational offset primacy. On a circle, only differences matter. The statement, point A is 90 degrees clockwise from point B, carries meaning. The statement, point A is at 90 degrees, carries meaning only relative to a chosen zero. This is the gauge relational heart we glimpsed in part 4. Absolute phi values are not publicly accessible. What's accessible are the relations, the differences, the intervals, the winding numbers. Think of a clock. It's 3 o'clock means something only because we've agreed that 12 o'clock is at the top. But that agreement is conventional. What's real is the relation between the hand position and the passage of time, the fact that it's 1/4 of the way around from midnight. Loop return. On a circle, if you go far enough in one direction, you come back to where you started. This property, closure, is transformative. Think of walking east. On a line, you could walk forever and never return. On a circle, you eventually come back to your starting point. That return creates the possibility of cycles, periods, recurrence. In pattern terms, closure means that paths can return to the same relational state after traversing a loop. This is the seed of all periodic phenomena: day and night, seasons, heartbeats, orbits, oscillations. Winding possibility. Because you can go around and around, you can count how many times you've circled. That count is an integer, 1, 2, 3, that emerges from continuous motion. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in all of phi pattern science. Discreteness arises naturally from continuity through closure. No one needs to put integers into the universe. They emerge from the simple fact that going around the circle and returning to start creates a natural count. The first integer is born. Think of a record player. The needle goes around and around. You don't need to count revolutions. The music's position in the groove tells you. But the revolutions are real, countable, discrete. They emerge from continuous rotation. Compactness. The circle is finite. Its total length is fixed. In angular terms, 360 degrees, 2 pi radians. This finiteness imposes global constraints. On an infinite line, you could keep going forever without any global structure. On a circle, the finiteness means that what happens in one region can affect what's possible elsewhere, because eventually you'll come back around. This is the seed of global constraints, conservation laws, topological obstructions. The circle's compactness makes the universe hang together in ways a line never could. What circle valuedness enables? From these foundational properties, a cascade of possibilities follows. Gauge freedom. Because absolute positions aren't fundamental, we can shift all values by a constant without changing the pattern. Phi to phi plus c leaves all relations invariant. This gauge freedom is not a nuisance, it's a feature. It means pattern identity lives in what survives such shifts, not in what depends on private coordinates. It's the mathematical expression of the relational principle. Periodicity. Closure naturally generates periodic structure. Patterns can repeat, cycle, oscillate, not because someone imposed the rhythm, but because the underlying comparability structure is circular. Think of biological rhythms, circadian cycles, heartbeats, breathing. These aren't arbitrary. They emerge from the circular nature of time-like comparability, which we'll later call cadence. Loop structure. Paths can form loops, and loops can carry memory. What happens on a closed path, the total change, the accumulated effect, is a real feature of the pattern, not reducible to what happens at any point. This is the seed of holonomy, of memory, of non-local effects. A pattern can remember what happened on a loop, even if every local patch looks the same. Integer residues. As we've seen, winding around the loop produces an integer count. These integers are the first discrete structures to emerge from continuous foundations. They're the seed of all quantization: particle numbers, charge, topological invariants. The integers aren't put in by hand, they grow from the circle. Topology. The circle enables global structure that can't be seen locally. Two patterns can look identical in every small region, but differ globally. One may wind around the whole, the other may not. This is topology, the study of properties that survive continuous deformation but aren't captured by local measurement. The circle is the simplest topological object, and it seeds all the richness to come. Why this is not decorative mathematics? At this point, someone might say, this is just math. Why does it matter for understanding reality? Here's why. The structure of primitive comparability determines what kinds of patterns can exist. If phi were linear, we'd have a very different universe. No cycles, no winding numbers, no natural integers, no topology. Patterns would be impoverished, static, unable to generate the richness we actually see. But phi is circular, and that single choice, that primitive comparability takes the form of a circle, seeds everything: periodicity, quantization, memory, global structure, defects, particles. It's not that we're imposing circularity on reality. It's that circularity is the form comparability must take to generate the patterns we actually observe. The circle is not a mathematical convenience. It's a discovery about the structure of public reality itself. Examples across scales. Let's see circularity at work across the universe. At the quantum scale, quantum phase is circle-valued. The phase of a wave function is an angle, 0 to 2 pi, with no absolute meaning, only differences matter. When a quantum system goes around a closed loop, it can acquire a phase shift. The Berry phase, the Aharonov-Bohm effect. That's winding number at work. Particles themselves can be understood as topological defects in circularly valued fields. The integer charges, electric charge, baryon number, are winding numbers in disguise. At the atomic scale, electron orbitals have angular structure. The quantum numbers that describe them, L, M, are integers arising from circular boundary conditions. The periodic table itself reflects the closure of electron shells. At the molecular scale, molecules have vibrational modes, rotational states. These are oscillations on circles in configuration space. The quantization of energy levels comes from circular boundary conditions in quantum mechanics. At the biological scale, circadian rhythms, 24-hour cycles tuned to Earth's rotation. Heartbeats, periodic contractions. Menstrual cycles, monthly rhythms. All are manifestations of circular time-like structure. DNA is a double helix, a spiral, a curve around an axis. The genetic code uses circular permutations in its operation. At the ecological scale, predator-prey cycles, populations oscillating in time. Seasonal cycles, ecosystems responding to annual rhythms. Nutrient cycles, carbon, nitrogen, water moving through closed loops. At the planetary scale, day and night, Earth's rotation on its axis. Seasons, Earth's orbit around the sun. The water cycle, evaporation, condensation, precipitation, return. All are cycles, loops, circular processes. At the cosmic scale, orbits, planets around stars, stars around galaxies, galaxies around cluster centers. These are nearly circular paths, stabilized by gravity. The cosmic microwave background, radiation from the early universe, has angular correlations that reflect the topology of the universe itself. The circle as universal grammar. What we are seeing is that circularity is not a special feature of some patterns. It's the universal grammar of pattern itself. Wherever there is comparability, wherever there is relation, wherever there is structure that can be tracked across change, there is circularity at the root. Not literal physical circles necessarily, but the logical form of circularity. Closure, return, winding, relation without absolute origin. A profound analogy, the musical circle. Musicians know something profound that maps directly onto phi pattern science. In Western music, we have the circle of fifths. It's a circular arrangement of keys. C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp / D fine, A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and back to C. Go around the circle and you return to where you started. This circle encodes all key relationships. It tells you which keys are closely related, adjacent on the circle, and which are distant. It shows how modulation works, how chord progressions flow, how harmony structures time. Notice, there's no privileged key. C major is no more fundamental than G major or F major. What matters are the relations, the intervals, the distances around the circle. The circle of fifths is pure phi structure, circular comparability generating musical pattern. Another analogy, the compass. A compass rose has four cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, and many intermediate points. But these are conventions. What matters for navigation is the relation between directions. That turning 90 degrees right takes you from north to east. That 180 degrees reverses your course. A sailor doesn't need an absolute north to navigate. They need consistent relations. The ability to measure angles, to maintain headings, to return to port after a voyage. The compass is phi structure, circular comparability enabling reliable movement through the world. The deepest point. Here's the deepest point of part 3. Phi patterns inherit cyclic comparability at the root. This means circularity is not an optional feature of some patterns. It's built into the foundation of all patterns. Every pattern, everywhere, at every scale, participates in the circular structure of primitive comparability. When you see a cycle, day and night, heartbeat, season, orbit, you're seeing the circle made manifest. When you count 1, 2, 3, you're using integers that emerged from circular winding. When you navigate by relations rather than absolutes, left, right, forward, back, you're living in gauge relational space. The circle is not just a shape, it's the form of possibility itself. What we've accomplished. By the end of part 3, we have given primitive comparability its essential structure. Phi is circle valued, S1. Circularity is not arbitrary. It's required by the relational nature of public reality. The circle seeds everything: gauge freedom, periodicity, winding numbers, topology, discrete from continuous. We understand that absolute values are not fundamental. Relations are. We have not yet said what parts of this structure are publicly accessible. That's next. A final image, the Great Loop. Imagine the entire universe, all patterns, all structures, all phenomena, as expressions of one great loop. Not a loop in space, but a loop in the space of possibility. A circle of comparability that underlies everything. At every point on this circle, there is a perspective. No perspective is privileged. What matters is the relations between perspectives, the arcs, the intervals, the winding numbers. All the richness of reality, particles and fields, life and mind, space and time, are ways of reading out this circular structure. The circle is not the pattern, it's what makes pattern possible. We are all, in a sense, living on this circle, navigating by relations, counting our revolutions, returning again and again to where we started, but never quite the same. Hand off to part 4. We now have circular primitive comparability. But a circle, by itself, doesn't give us public pattern content. If absolute positions are meaningful, what is publicly accessible? The next question is unavoidable. If phi is circular, what part of a phi pattern can actually be shared and certified? What can we point to and say, this is the pattern? The answer will be only the relations, only the differences, only what survives the shift. And that leads us to part 4. The public face of phi pattern, why only relations delta phi are public. This is part 3 of the phi pattern science story. The journey continues with part 4. The public face of phi pattern, why only relations delta phi are public. Always, peace be upon you.